Hey there, we're going to wrap up some things in A1 here. We're going to finish talking about the rational exponents now that we've been through a little bit of other stuff. And here's the bottom line is if we have some fractional power, right, because that's what a rational is, it's a fraction. That means that that's the root, okay? So the cube root is actually the 1/3 power. We can have both of these things happen. So if I have something squared, right, this is the power over the root, right? It's the second power third root, second power third root, and then this is the one we talked about in the last video is the order does not matter, right? I can definitely do the cube root of 8 becomes 2, so that makes this problem easier. So you can do this in any order, and that certainly helps as we deal with everything else. So first thing we're going to do is simply translate like you would in a language class. So these all have radicals, so we need to write them so that they have an exponent. So 5, it is to the first power, and the index is 2. Remember, if there's nothing in here, that means 2. So the next one, we have 5 is the first power and third root. X is the same way, but y has a second power and third root. And so we might clump 5 and x together and say 1/3 and y to the 2/3. Either one of these would be fine, okay? Especially right now, we're just trying to get this whole thing under our belts. Again, we go with this invisible here. Remember, that's 2. So I have x plus y. This is to the 3/2 power. Okay, let's try to divide these up a little bit. All right, so what happens here is I have 3 and I have x, and then this other x, so be careful here, this is actually in the index. That really got slammed together. So it's in the index. So this is x to the 2/5 power. So what we can ask you to do afterwards is then maybe multiply this. So what do I have to do? If I have x to the first power and x to the 2/5, is then we start to put those together. Okay, so bases, we would add those together. Next thing we're going to do is deal with the same idea. So I have 2x, 3 is going to be the second power, but the 5th root. X is to the 5th power and the 5th root. So we know this turns into 1. So some of these we could start to filter out what's happening with those x's. We'd have to add those together, so we would get an x squared out of that. Okay, but right now, we just want to make sure we can rewrite it. As far as putting them together, we'll do that soon enough. All right, we want to rewrite these. So these have the rationals, right, fractions. So we want to turn these into the radicals. So 6 is going to get covered by this. It is to the second power, so the 3 goes in here as the index. Not too bad. So 5 is going to be covered by a square root. X is also going to be covered by a square root. Okay, so that takes care of that index, but x is to the 3rd power. So although it looks very different, they're both covered by the square root, so it's not a big deal. So using that idea, we know we need x and y covered by what kind of root? Cube root. X is squared and y is to the 1st. If you write that in, that's fine. You just wouldn't see it as multiple choice. So what's going on here is we have x, we have the power is 3, we're taking the square root of it, but this negative means it should be in the denominator. Okay, since we said don't rationalize the denominator for this one, not required, we're just translating things back and forth so that we can work with them later. Okay, so now that we've seen that, we want to review our exponent rules, and this is where we're going to use some of those things. Remember, it's power to a power has to happen first, so this is now x to the 2/3. This is y to the 9/3, or just the 3rd power. We need to multiply that by xy squared. So our y squared times y squared, or I'm sorry, y cubed and y squared, that adds up to y to the 5th. Okay. Then we end up with this. We have to do 2/3 plus 1. Okay, so remember that's 3/3 because we need to put these as rational expressions. So we need to make sure this is a fraction in the end. So I'm not going to use a mixed number. So we're at 5/3 for the x's to put all those together. All right, next one over. We want to try and, if we could clean up vertically, we would, but we can't, so we won't. All right, so we got 3 times 2, that's 6. That's going to be in my numerator. Let's figure out what happens next. I have some unlike denominators here, and I need to add those together, so we need to make them into the same thing. So making these into 6, so this will be 4/6. This will be minus 3/6. So we know it's going to be x to the 1/6. All right, in the denominator, looks like we're going to 10. So this is 5/10. This is 4/10. They're both positive, so we'll have y to the 9/10. Okay, so we're going to take all your exponent rules and we're going to use them along with what we're doing here with these fractional exponents. All right, so the next one we have is the power to a power. So remember, this does go to both of our powers. This time we're going to multiply. So I have x to the -2nd. We have negative and negative, so it'd be y to the positive. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Right, so we're going to reduce that to 1/6, but that's okay because we also have to take care of this negative exponent on the x, which means we're going to drop this term to the denominator. So it'll be 1 over x squared and y to the 1/3. So to clean those things up. All right, so that's kind of the quick part of that. All right, we want to rewrite using a single radical. Okay, so notice we're covered by radicals over and over and over again. So what we're going to do is use rational exponents to do this. So the square root is actually what power? 1/2. So I have 3xy to the 5th. So at first we have the square root, and then we have that to the square root. So we'd have it to the 1/2 power and to the 1/2 power. Okay, so we want to rewrite using a single radical. So what should it be? Right. So power to power, we're going to multiply. So this is 3xy to the 5th to the 1/4. So as a single radical, it should be the 4th root of 3xy to the 5th. And so once you see this once or twice, you kind of get the idea of what's happening. So that means we have xy. At first, it's to the 1/3 power, and then it's to the 1/2 power. So that means we have xy, and the whole thing would be to the 1/6 power. So we're actually after the 6th root of xy in this problem. Next one looks a little bit different. We have x to the 1/2 power times x to the 1/4 power. Well, what do I do with those? Remember, we need to add those together. So first thing we'll do is we turn 1/2 into 2/4. This is x to the 3/4 power. And remember, we do want it as a single radical, so I have x cubed covered by the 4th root. So we're really still translating, but we're working back and forth to figure out what's going on here. So first thing we'll do is translate each individual. So 2/3, 2/4. Anybody want to change that right now? Yeah, me too. That's 1/2. Okay, next thing we're going to do, since we're multiplying right here, we need to add these together. So it looks like we're going to go to what, 4/6 and 3/6. So we're up to x to the 7/6, which should look like x to the 7th power covered by the 6th root. Remember, it's power over the root to make that a little bit easier. All right, so we get a couple more now with our division. So we know it's x to the 1/2 over x to the 1/3. Okay, so we know we're going to subtract these, but again, we need the common denominator. So we got 3/6 minus 2/6 to get 1/6. So we're dealing with x to the 1/6. So that'll look like x covered by the 6th root. X covered by the 6th root. Okay, one more to go. X to the 2/5, and we got x to the 1/3. Okay, so we're trying to make a common denominator 15s, 6/15 minus 5/15. So we're going to deal with x to the 1/15, which will look like x to the 1st power, covered by the 15th root. Okay, so just combining our exponent rules from way, way back with rational exponents and trying to make them some ugly fractions, just to get you ready. All right, so again, I have homework attached right here. You have some space to the left and to the right to try and write out your answers. I thought that, again, is the most useful thing for the space you have. Bring your questions to class. Peace.